Support for this podcast has been provided by Alliance Bernstein Investment Management and Research, making money meaningful.
I would be getting all of these calls. So how do I do that? How do I order tickets online? How do I do this on the web? How do I do that? My computer is broken. How do I fix it? And it came to me that instead of having to call somebody, have like the resident geek, the resident family geek, maybe the web application could provide such guidance as to how to use it.
This is Startup Stories from the Startup Nation. My name is Yigal Marcus. Thank you for joining us. In this podcast, we'll meet the entrepreneurs who have personified the economic miracle known as the Startup Nation, the State of Israel. We'll learn about the culture which helped incubate them and their ideas. We'll learn of their successes and, of course, their failures. And we'll explore why it is that Israel develops some of the leading innovators of our time. In a great scene from a movie called Office Space, a few colleagues team up to take their fax machine to an empty field with bat in hand and proceed to utterly destroy it. In one of the funniest scenes in that movie, they smash the fax machine to smithereens. Now, we've all been there. How many of us at some point wanted to throw our computers out of our windows simply because it wasn't working to our expectations? According to eHorus, computer stress is actually a thing. It's an official condition when someone feels the anxiety and nervousness when their computer doesn't work as expected. Computer stress can actually cause medical problems, and there have actually been documented cases of heart attacks triggered by computer stress. Here's the story of a self-proclaimed computer geek who, after being constantly called upon to solve computer problems that others were experiencing, decided to do something about it. He conceived of a company called Iridize, a leading enterprise platform for personalized and contextual user onboarding and training. Put much more simply, Iridize sought to automate the process of helping people use their computers and the software on it. A few years in, the computer pivoted and refocused on employee training. Now, as it began growing more rapidly, Oracle stepped in and bought the company. Now, employee training is a huge global business. On average, employees cost $1,800 to be trained. So the ability to onboard and properly train new employees efficiently has the potential to save a lot of money for companies all over the world. This is the story of how the solution Iridize offers and the vision of its founder is helping companies lower training costs and increase employee productivity all over the world. We're here today with Eyal Lewinson, the co-founder and CEO of a company called Iridize, which was recently purchased by Oracle. So first of all, Eyal, thank you very much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Let's start a little bit about you and where you grew up and a little bit about your past.
Okay. Well, I was born in Jerusalem, and then I moved when I was 4 years old. I moved to a kibbutz.
Which one is that?
Givat HaShlosha.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with my father, not my father switched jobs, so he was working for the Israeli television, and then as an engineer, and then he went to work for, like myself, work for the, I don't know the name for it now, the Shabak. I'm not sure if you can.
Sure, it's like Israeli.
I think you can say that now because he's well retired by now.
Right, so, NSA. It's the Israeli version of the national the NSA.
Something like that, yeah, or the FBI maybe.
Pretty much same thing.
Yeah.
In America, all these organizations are so, so you actually grew up on a kibbutz for the better part.
Not for a long time, because when I was supposed to go to first grade, there weren't enough kids there.
Okay.
So we moved to yet another place called Kochav Yair, which is where I spent most of my childhood. And
now you're a second generation Sabra, Israeli born, or how long has your family been in the country?
my mother was born in Israel. My father was not.
Where was your father born?
In Poland. All of my grandparents are Holocaust survivors. So, yeah.
And he moved here
When he was 2 years old, something like that.
shortly after the war, I imagine. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you grew up in Kochav Yair, which is not a kibbutz. So, kibbutz life is very different. My listeners will know that I had done an interview a few months ago with one of the founders of Nitafim.
Ah, okay.
And Nitafim was founded on Kibbutz Chatzerim, and this past Sunday, as Nati Barak promised, he said that he'd host me and my family. So we actually went to Kibbutz Chatzerim near Beersheva, and we saw what was kibbutz life, which is very different, in many ways wonderful, and in many ways just very different than I'm a capitalist. But life there was. Do you remember it much as a child? Not really.
I was a kid, so for me it was fun, because there is really no you don't have to worry about. You just go out of your house and do whatever you want, and there is a pool that you can go in whenever you want to, and so it's free stuff for free stuff as a kid to do anything you want. That's what I remember, which was a good thing. I haven't lived as a grown-up in a kibbutz, but I think it's too much. It wouldn't be my cup of tea, because
especially when you start companies and
Yeah, it's one big commune. Everybody has to know everything, so it's everybody is into everybody's business, and I'm not sure I'm up with that. So,
understood. When did you first realize that technology, which is ultimately the business that you're in, when did you realize that that's pretty cool and get into it and begin to study and pursue it?
So when we moved to Kochav Yair, I remember my father getting a Apple IIc, which was this very old machine.
I had one.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
And
loved it.
You had a small TV that's connected to this big keyboard, and all of the computer was inside the keyboard.
Right.
And I remember playing with it, these silly games, and enjoying it, and taking out there was this box for diskettes that you have to...
Right, these floppy disks.
Yeah, these...
I remember that.
5.12, I think. They're pretty big, and you take them out, and in the middle of the game, you have to switch them in order to proceed, and all of that stuff. So that was my first interaction with computers. And then... it was fun, and I kept playing, and I didn't get to that, but from Kochav Yair, when I turned, I think, after my bar mitzvah, just after my bar mitzvah, we moved to the States. My father had was sent to 3 years, which became 4. When we were just about to leave, I remember the house being packed, everything in boxes, and I really had nothing to do. And my father did his PhD there. So,
is that where you went?
No, he went as part of work, but he did his PhD while being there. And I remember there was a book about C++ lying around. And the computer was always on because he had to work on his PhD, and it was the time that we had the internet also. It started, this was I think 95, so the internet started to pick up.
So you were pretty much 16 years old, right? It was
17.
17 years old, and picked up his book on C++.
Yeah,
sounds like exciting reading.
Yeah, and I just started reading, and it caught on, I guess. So. After that, I decided to study. So when we came back, I went to the university to study math and computer science.
Before the army?
Before the army, yeah.
So this is Atuda?
Yes.
Got it.
Also, I was 17, so in order to enlist, I was Like I had one more year to, like nobody would enlist you when you're 17, so I had 1 year to spare, so I could either go to work or go to study.
So you finished high school in America?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
So you finished early.
Yeah. They have this, I guess it's kind of like the States in Israel where you have the Bagrut and you have points, and if you get, actually it's more like a university. You get to like, if you finish enough points, you can graduate. So most of the Israelis that I studied with did that. So
Okay.
it's not that.
So you came back, you had a year off. So instead of going to the army, you went to this Atuda program, which is, for my listeners, the ability to go to university before you serve, learn an expertise, come back to the army pays for it, comes back to the army, and then you have to devote 5 years?
So first of all, when I did it, the army didn't pay for anything.
Oh,
They just...
bummer.
Now they do, by the way.
You need to learn how to negotiate.
Now they do, by the way. It was just so everything else you said was right. And the program was that you study during the year, and between the semesters, you would go to the army and do your how do you say tiranut in English? I'm not even sure.
Your service.
No, but it's just like the tiranut where you enlist and they teach you how to be a soldier. And,
Basic training.
Yeah, basic training. And then the next year you go to another course. And then after 3 years of when you finish your degree, you enlist into the army. And then you have to do 3 years of like everybody else, 3 years of Sadir. I'm not sure what's the translation for that would be. And then you have 3 more years as Keva, which would be like your
regular.
So every Israeli soldier does 3 years, and we had to do another 3 years. The upside is that in those other 3 years, you get like a better salary. You go through an officer's course, and you're a captain now, and so you get a decent salary, not a high-tech salary, but something decent. As opposed to the 300 shekels that I got as soldiers in the first 3 years.
That's about $80 a month.
Yeah.
You're rich, man. You're really rich. But so you went to the army. Did you know that you would be going into that kind of technology unit, or?
Actually, it's funny. I didn't. When you finish your studies, you start to get these interviews for army units that want to recruit you. And obviously I ended up in 8200, but this is not what I wanted. So I interviewed with them. I obviously passed the interview, but there was another unit that I felt much more excited about, something in an artillery. I don't know.
You wanted to be a combat soldier?
No, it was like algorithms development for an artillery unit. I'm not even sure what they're doing. It was just what they told me in this interview. It sounded more cool.
Are you insane? You have the opportunity to get into Unit 8200, the premier intelligence unit in the IDF, and you'd rather figure out how to shoot artillery shells with algorithms.
So yeah, I was stupid back then, but it sounded cool at the time. It was a small unit, but obviously 8200 had much more leverage, and they decided that I should have a better future over in
intelligence.
Yeah,
got it. So you served in this elite intelligence unit, 8200, and you actually eventually became an R&D team leader in that unit, and ultimately you became the head of that team.
Yeah.
Tell me about that experience. So your job as an R&D team leader was to do what? Without getting into anything top secret.
So I guess the entire atmosphere and the entire purpose of 8200 and why I think it's such a good experience for an entrepreneur is that in the end you have to face problems that nobody faced before you, and you need to solve them. So as a team leader, I would be getting these problems.
Okay.
We need to do this. I mean, there is a problem with that, and I have to sit with my team and find a programmatic solution for these problems. And nobody would ever tell me what technology to use. Nobody would ever tell me if I write good or bad code. It was just about getting out the intelligence from this problem, right? So, and I think that this is the essence of entrepreneurship, right? Nobody tells you how to do things. They just tell you,
get it done.
Yeah, and that's what we did. So a lot of, and I moved between a lot of places. I think I had, in those 6 years, I think I had around 6 roles in the army. So developer, then team leader in another group, then team leader in another group, and then I was working for. So normally you would have, at least historically, you had like the division that develops the software, and you have the division that actually, they know Arabic, they know the intelligence domain, and they extract like relevant intelligence from them. So I even had a period where I was part of the intelligence part. So yeah, it's just, I guess it's just about having to tackle a lot of hard life problems and not knowing what the solution would be to those problems, and having enough self-confidence, which is great for building that in the army, to know that you will be able to solve these problems if you put enough effort into it. So,
when you become a team leader, you're kind of forced to become a manager.
Yeah.
Which ultimately, when you started Iridize, you were very, very forced to become a manager of a lot of people. So tell me a little bit about what you learned when you first started managing people in the army.
I think I learned that you need to give people space. I think I learned that not everybody is going to do things the way you're going to do them, and you need to allow them to do things their way. I think I learned a lesson in patience, because I would always envision how I would do things, and if they're not done my way and not as quickly as I think I would have done that, I had to learn to give that person some more time. Let's see what they come up with, and normally it would pay it off, because everybody I ever worked with in the army were very smart people, and they always would come up with ideas as good as mine. So that's a good lesson, I think.
And you were just a couple of years older than probably the people that you managed.
At the beginning, yes. It's
always a difficult dynamic, right? It's always...
Yeah, but I think that until today, I don't manage by authority. I really manage by as a peer. So I would never tell somebody to do something because I said so. I can tell that in all of my experience, I've never done this once. It's always about having a conversation, convincing whoever you need to convince, or being convinced that this is the right way to do things, and then doing them. And when you come with this approach, I think that authority and rank, this doesn't really play a role in the discussion.
After your experience in the army, you left and you became a programmer at a company that my listeners know well, ZoomInfo, Jonathan Stern's company. What did you do there?
So when I left the army after 7 years, by the way, so I added another year on top of the 6, just because I really liked it and I felt that it was good for me. And when I left, I joined this startup company called ZoomInfo, which, as you mentioned, Jonathan was the CEO of, and I was their first recruit in Israel. So ZoomInfo was a Boston-based company, and I think that Jonathan, for his patriotic reasons, wanted to bring it back to Israel. Well, not bring everything to Israel, but create some presence in Israel in the form of an R&D department, and I was the first recruit in Israel. And I started working for the company. I really enjoyed at the time we were head-to-head with LinkedIn.
I remember that.
And We did things differently. For a programmer, I think what we did was more interesting because we had to artificially build profiles for people as opposed to the LinkedIn way, which was all user generated. So I think that from an R&D perspective, it's much more exciting. And I joined the R&D department of ZoomInfo in Israel. I don't remember the structure, but I do remember that when I left ZoomInfo, and if you want, we can talk about that too. When I left ZoomInfo, we were, I think, 6 people in Israel. There was obviously Jonathan, there was the office administrator, there was a product manager, which I had tried to work on a startup with after ZoomInfo immediately, really? And it wasn't that successful. And we were 4 developers, which at the end I led these 4 developers as well as I think 2 or 3 developers in Boston, working on the algorithms that would build these profiles. It was a great experience. And I kept in touch with Jonathan, and we're neighbors right now, so we still bump into one another every once in a while.
Nice. And then you went on to RSA, which is the security division of EMC, and you were there for about almost 5 years. And there you also were a software engineer?
So similarly, like ZoomInfo, I started as an engineer and became a group leader. It's a recurring theme. So when I left ZoomInfo, I felt that I wanted to experience more of a corporate company, like a bigger company, to see what it would feel like, to see if I could fit in, to see the culture, and to experience something else. And I joined RSA as a software engineer. I mean, I joined it as RSA, but it was just before I joined, it was acquired by RSA. The company was called Sayota. It's the company that Naftali Bennett headed and became rich from. Naftali
Bennett's a member of Knesset, actually a former member of Knesset.
Yeah, so the product was for anti-fraud for online banking. So you would, at least the product that I worked for, so when you log into your bank account, if you are doing something that's not in the normal things that you would normally do, then a pop-up message would come up and ask you to provide your credentials, like provide a one-time password or something like that. You would get an SMS or something like that. And I was working on the artificial intelligence piece that decided whether to show you this pop-up or not. So figure out whether what you're doing is in line with what you're normally doing or not.
Did that plant the seeds for Iridize?
No.
Okay.
Well, maybe I think it planted the seed for me wanting to do something on my own.
Okay.
Because things seemed to move very slowly when I was in RSA. And I remember having these discussions with my wife, Michal, about why are things happening this way? Why is this like that? And, these having problems with bureaucracy, I would say. And I think that I always wanted to do something on my own. And when the idea came as I was working in RSA, I said, okay, I tried the corporate piece. I'm not fitting in, at least not into this one. And let's try something new.
When did you think of the idea for Iridize?
Obviously, I'm the family geek, right? So I'm the person.
Clearly.
I'm the person in the family that knows computers, that people call if they have a question about computers. And I'm talking the extended family, right? So uncles and my grandmother who does WhatsApp, by the way, still.
Wow. That's impressive.
And yeah, she's 90 now, more than 90. So I will be getting all of these calls. So how do I do that? How do I order tickets online? How do I do this on the web? How do I do that? My computer is broken. How do I fix it? And it came to me that instead of having to call somebody, have like the resident geek, the resident family geek, maybe the web application could provide such guidance as to how to use it. And this is where the idea from Iridize came from. So you can say that I have to thank my grandmother or something like that.
90 years old. Love it. Does she do those GIFs on WhatsApp? Because that's impressive. Right. You got to teach her, man. I mean, come on. When you work for a big company and you decide to make the jump from security of a salary, a good company, a job, and you jump into the world of being an entrepreneur, it's a huge jump.
Yeah.
What enabled you to make that jump? Because the risk level, I imagine, and the stress.
So two things. Well, probably one thing. The second one is a joke. The one thing would be my wife, Michal.
Okay. She encouraged you.
Yeah. And also I had her back. So she was working on a good job and we knew that we can make it. And the second one as a joke would be my severance pay. So... but it's just a joke.
Right. It helps. It helps.
But it does help because I had a lot of time in RSA, so it gave me, I think, 5 or 6 months of something that I can play with.
What did you do to vet the idea? To check, is this something that companies would pay for?
First of all, the idea made sense to me. So what I did with my co-founder was to build a prototype, okay? And then with that prototype, obviously we used our network in Israel and we went to companies and tried to ask them what they feel about it, how they feel about it. And this is how we started. This is how we vetted the idea. You can also say that at some point along the way, a small company, joke, WalkMe, came along.
Right.
And vetted the idea for us.
Right. WalkMe is a pretty big competitor, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were, I guess, we were their top competitor. Obviously, they were a much bigger company with much bigger investment. I think it's more than $2 million by now. And...
$2 billion.
No, 200 million. More than $200 million of investment. I don't know what they're worth right now, but I'm pretty sure about that number. And so that did part of the vetting too. I mean, obviously, if somebody's getting so much traction and so much investment at that time, they just beat. I think that, I don't remember the dates, I'm very bad with that, but I think that 4 months after we started working on this prototype that we would want to present to people, they came up with this their first big investment. And at the beginning, we were kind of bummed about it, because if they got so much money, how can we succeed? But I think that we were smart enough to realize that it's a good indication that we're doing something right, and we decided to push on.
Did you ever get a response from somebody that says, WalkMe's doing this, don't bother?
Yes, at the time when we tried to get investments, it was a recurring theme.
What made you continue to build this? Because it would have been easy to say, you know what, it's not, we've got competition. It's not necessarily an original idea. Let WalkMe grab the market and let's go do something else. What made you say, you know what, I think I can do something either different or better, making it worthwhile for you to continue?
I'm not sure. I guess I just believe that we can do it, and that there is not. I mean, in the B2B space, it's not a one. Like, normally in the B2B space, there are more than one company that does something. I mean, unlike you can say that Google is the only search engine and Facebook is the only social. Well, probably now no, but in the consumer space, I think that there is a winner takes all atmosphere, but in the B2B space, I don't think that's the case in any way. So, and we found that okay, they're doing. And by the way, I have to thank WalkMe for a lot of their marketing, because we were piggybacking on top of that. And a lot of our customers came as they saw WalkMe, they saw their pricing, they looked for competitors, and they found Iridize. So it helped us, and I think I just believe that there is room for more than one company, and I think I was right.
For sure. Did you raise money?
No, never.
You never raised investment capital?
No. Well, it's partly true. So when I founded my company with my co-founder, Oded, both of our parents, my father and his father, both of the families put in some money. At the time, Oded was doing his PhD and I was still working in RSA. So we used the money to write down the architecture and design for the system, and we paid a freelancer to build it. And I don't remember the timing, but when we felt that this was ready and we felt that okay, now would be the time to start working full time on it, then I left RSA. Oded was finished with his PhD, and we started working full time.
What's Oded's last name?
Ben David.
How did you guys divide your responsibilities? Two founders starting a company.
I don't think we ever did. So it was just like I was the CEO, he was the CTO, and I think that we came to this conclusion just because I hope he wouldn't be mad at me, but it's obvious that he cannot be CEO, so it was kind of like my thing. And but we were both highly technical. We both came from, we were friends from Kochav Yair, but we both served in 8200. We were both programmers, and it was not about like, I'm more of a manager type, so I will be the CEO. I think I'm more managerial than him, so we decided that obviously a company...
It's all relative, right? It's all relative in terms of...
A company needs a CEO, so that would be me, but it was really like... And we did everything together until we separated.
So you basically self-funded. Family is pretty much you and Oded. You got a product designed and deployed. And when did you begin seeing revenues? When did you first sell this?
So when we had the prototype ready and up and running, I would, as the CEO, I would go. So I went into LinkedIn and I looked for Israeli startups. Our first business proposition, and this obviously changed, was to provide SaaS companies, so software as a service companies, with a good solution for converting their free trials. So somebody would log in, give their email, they would see the application for the first time, and Iridize would be the perfect solution to show them around the application, show what it can do for them, and hopefully get some traction for our customer. And as a result, the user would start paying when the trial finished. Okay, so this was our first offering, our first business offering. The first use case that we ever worked on. So as a result, I started looking for Israeli SaaS companies through LinkedIn, through connections, and I managed to secure 3 such companies with my LinkedIn networking, I don't know how to call it.
Okay.
And they were our first paying customers, and obviously we didn't have revenues by then, but we had profits.
When did you begin to hire up more people? I mean, if you had no revenues or very little revenues coming in.
I think that for the first 2 years at least, we didn't take any salary, neither Oded nor myself. When we did start, it was very small, and it was always about letting the company grow. 3 years after we started, we landed a pretty big deal, like $100K annual. annual subscription. And this is when we actually, I think, if I remember correctly, we started taking some salary, but most of the money that we got from that was to hire Oded, which again is still with another Oded, which is still with Iridize, Oded Ilan this time. And he was our first real sales guy. Like he was our CMO, he managed the sales and the marketing. And he's really the one to thank for the shift that we did from SaaS companies to the enterprise market and to employee training, which is really what Oracle bought in the end. So instead of helping SaaS companies in their free trial conversion, we started doing employee training. So giving enterprises the ability to train their employees quickly and efficiently so that they would be productive sooner rather than later. And it was a much better deal because A, enterprises have much more money. B, they don't close like SaaS startup companies every Monday. So like a lot of our companies would start and either they would not have the money to pay us what we wanted or they would pay and then close. So targeting enterprises was a much better idea.
And how did sales go? I mean, you pivoted from being, as you just mentioned, selling to SaaS to employee training. How quickly did that ramp up in terms of you realizing, yeah, this is where we should be?
So I think it was a 1-year process from the time I joined, learning the product, us figuring out. It was a group effort, right? It wasn't just Oded saying, okay, we should target enterprise. Obviously, it was a thing that grew up and cooked inside our heads, and because we saw that the SaaS companies were closing and they were not able to pay, and there was no person in the SaaS company that could manage Iridize, because you have to be with the training state of mind in order to use such a thing, and you have to have the capacity to work on it. And if you're a product manager for a startup that's worried about free trial, you normally are just there are always fires that you need to turn out.
Survival mode.
Yeah. And there was never a time to work on Iridize. And our successful SaaS customers were such that there were big companies that had a training department, and this cooked the thing for us to, okay, maybe we need to look for training departments in companies. So we targeted medium to large companies. And then we said, okay, if we're training these medium to large companies, maybe we need to train employees instead. And it was a 1-year process because you have to uplift your website, you have to rewrite all of your blog posts to, instead of talking about free trial, you need to start talking about employee conversion and I don't remember the term employee turnover, mm-hmm. and all of these things. And from the benefits need to be now employee training and support, lower support costs, because an employee would call the company help desk and it would waste his time. And so this was it took us, I think, 1 year until we started landing these bigger companies. And this is where things started to take off, which is, I think, 6 years after we started. So,
hey, you know what? All good things take time. Looking back and thinking about how you executed your business plan, it's inevitable that you encountered serious barriers to the growth of your business and to the ultimate success. When you think about that, what were some of the biggest barriers that you faced and had to overcome?
Just resources. I mean, we never had enough people, and you have to remember that at the same time that when Iridize was sold to Oracle, we were just 8 people.
Wow.
Okay, and at the same time, you have this company called WalkMe that are raising money. I think now there are probably close to 1,000 employees, definitely over 500, and we just have to push hard and make it, and it was always, resources was always our biggest concern, and I think that thanks to the architecture and the product that we build, we were able to provide an even better service than WalkMe to the customers that chose to work with us.
When you thought about selling, were you approached or were you actively trying to shop the company?
When we finally started to see the switch to enterprise working for us, we landed big deals with Visa, with DHL, and Oracle. So Oracle was our customer before they decided to buy us, and I think that was the thing. So when Oracle saw that it's working for them internally, they used it internally, by the way, for their sales force. And when they saw that it's working, I think that this is when they approached us to purchase the company.
When you went through that process, obviously it's...
You mean the acquisition?
The acquisition process, correct, with Oracle. So obviously it's a little bit bittersweet. You know, you see WalkMe growing at crazy rates and raising a ton of money. You're beginning to get real traction. DHL, Oracle, these are huge companies. What made you decide at that point that putting this in the hands of a company like Oracle would be best?
I think it was a combination of things. I think that number one, I think that after 7 years of pushing through, I felt that it was a good exit to, you know, not just from a monetary perspective, but also to cool down a little bit. I also think that the fact that Oded, as a co-founder, left, I felt that this would be a good time to, you know, even things out and move on to the next thing. And I think that I also really, through the talks, I really shared, and I still share, the vision that Oracle had, Oracle University had for the product. So it was a combination of all of those things, I think.
So you did the deal. You're now at Oracle. You're vice president there. How's that been going for you?
Good. Very excited. Again, very exciting. Again, I really... I don't know if I changed or if it's a different corporation, but to date, I'm very much okay with all of the corporate America type of things that pushed me away when I was in RSA. I think that the product vision, I really like where we're taking Iridize now to the next levels, to the next generation, and it's great to see that it's being consumed and integrated into the bigger Oracle, into such a big company, and being used by a lot of its customers.
And not having the stress of having to get resources and worry about, you know, all the administrative things that startups have to worry about. Exactly. I imagine that's been a big plus. Looking back at this process of building your own company, if there was one thing that you could have done differently over the last 7-8 years since you launched it, what would it be?
Never thought about that. I guess I'm an optimistic guy. I look at the bright side of life, and I never really thought about what I would do differently.
Let me rephrase it maybe. What did you learn over the course of the last 7 years and going through this process that, in retrospect, you know, should you at some point in the future want to launch another startup, you would apply there?
It would probably sound a little bit kitschy, but I think I learned that you have to believe in yourself. Because all throughout this process, we would never get, we were not successful in getting any investments, and it was very hard for us to always push forward and grow our business. And I think that, and there were, I mean, people all around you are all about, how come you're not getting an investment? Why are you not getting an investment? How are you going to succeed without an investment? And it was really up to, I really had to, I don't know how I did it, but I really had to just keep on moving. That's the bottom line. And believe that even without the investment, we can make it work. So that's one thing. And the second thing, I think, is perseverance, I guess. Just to, again, keep on moving. Don't let, because it's a roller coaster. You have up and downs. Everything, like you would sign a big deal and then somebody would decide to stop using your service, or it's always like these ups and downs, and you have to keep on pushing and keep on believing. And I don't know, I guess it doesn't sound very, it sounds kitschy, I guess, but that's the truth.
I'll tell you why I don't think it is. It's not, because too often we have entrepreneurs who have built businesses that when you raise real money, it becomes a lot easier, because a lot of the stresses of finances, can suffocate businesses. Not having that financing really tests the character of not just you as a co-founder, but of your team, the other 7 or 8 people who work with you, and being able to produce under those environments is very difficult, much more difficult than companies who can go out and raise money right and left. So that's actually really interesting, and I think really interesting story and a great success. A couple of more questions. Looking at your career today, where you are, where you've been, and where ultimately you're going, what motivates you?
I would say that I want what I'm working on to be successful, but then you're going to ask what would make it successful. So
you're getting to know me very well, yeah.
I don't know. I guess that with Iridize, what pushed me was really the belief that there is a way to help people use the web, like learn how to use the web in a way that's not intensive on support, make things more intuitive. And now when I'm in Oracle, I'm more, it's making the life of an employee who has to cope with a plethora of applications that they need to use on a daily basis, on a day-to-day basis, and it's letting them have a good experience with those applications and letting them do their work, as opposed to successfully use the application, right? So take their effort from using the application successfully and putting it into doing the things that they really need to do, whether it's selling or financing the company or whatever it is. And I guess I want to make an impact for these people, to make the life of Oracle employees better, and the Oracle customers, the employees of Oracle customers' lives easier as they use the Oracle applications and other applications as well.
Did Iridize retain its name, or did they fold you into Oracle?
If you log into our site, it says Oracle plus Iridize now. I think that at some point along the way, we will change the name. Inside Oracle, it's called Oracle Guided Learning, which is a good name.
How'd you go with the name Iridize?
That's so funny. So it's two things. Oded and I were looking for a .com name that was still open. And I have to give credit to Oded Ben David for that. He came up with he saw that Iridize was open. Now, I don't know how he came up with Iridize, but we felt that it was a good, because Iridize is a verb in English, if you don't know. It's to make something glow. And we felt it was kind of cool that we're making the web glow, and we're making applications glow. And so this is how it stuck.
One final question about Israel. So, obviously you had some experience overseas as a young teenager. So you have perhaps, multiple angles in seeing this. But what is it about Israel that creates entrepreneurs like yourself and other successful entrepreneurs at a rate that's obviously much, much greater than probably anywhere else on the face of the earth?
Couple of things. Well, more than a couple. I think that the army, like 8200, is obviously a good stepping stone for these things, because, as I said, you are faced with these problems, and nobody knows the solution, and you just have to figure it out. And so that's one thing. Just being alone in your quest to solve a problem is really what entrepreneurship is all about. So a lot of people do that in their service in the army, in the intelligence section at least, and this gives them, not to mention the fact that some of them actually work on things that would make sense in the real world, like, for example, Checkpoint, right? So it's okay, so we did something similar. We see how we can use this in the corporate landscape, and we're doing it. Another thing I think is the Israeli mentality, because obviously not a lot of entrepreneurs serve in the intelligence force. I think that Israelis are very, it's chutzpah, not taking no for an answer, quick gratifications. Like, we don't have the patience to wait for something, so if it's not working the way that it's supposed to, we try to find another way, hence innovation, right? So we find another way to make something work. Yeah, I guess it's, obviously there are also bad parts to that, but as far as innovation is concerned, I think it's a good thing. Just not taking no for an answer. And
one last question. What is the one question entrepreneurs should ask themselves before they launch a business, based on your experience?
I don't know if it's the one question, but a lot of people come up with ideas and they ask me about their ideas. So I think that the first thing that you need to do is to really search the web to see if, like, what you're trying to do is not already out there. And obviously Iridize was not the first company to do things, but we already started. So if you're starting something new and you're looking for, and you want to start in this thing, then it's good to, if somebody is doing something similar, that's great, but you have to find your niche and your differentiation before you begin. And another thing which, when I always talk to people, I always find that they're thinking they're stuck on the vision, and they forgetting that they need to get there with baby steps, and they're always forgetting like what would be the MVP, like the minimum viable product. And when they think that they know what the MVP is, it's still like this very complex system that is integrating in like 50 different things into one. So I always give the advice to really try to like really, really minimalize, like maybe like even doing without any computer programming. Like if you can mimic the thing that the computer would do and have a conversation with the person, then I would try doing that first. And really, really cut down all of the integrations and all of the complexity, and try to really minimalize something that you can potentially sell.
Eyal Lewinson, thank you very much for your time. This was great. Fascinating how you built a business and the lessons you learned. It's a different path that you took than a traditional entrepreneur, and that to me is really interesting. And thank you for your time today. And obviously, I wish you a tremendous amount of luck at Oracle as you continue to build this and see the fruits of your passion and all the efforts that you put in for so many years. But thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
You've been listening to Startup Stories from the Startup Nation. I'm the host, Yigal Marcus. The associate producers are Moshe Raps and Avi Machlis. The assistant producer is Rachel Zach, and the senior research analyst is Lior Leben. If you have a successful startup in Israel you'd like featured on the show, please email us at startupstoriesisrael@gmail.com. And you can now visit our brand new website, www.startupstoriesisrael.com, where you'll find our growing list of podcasts with some of Israel's most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders. A big shout out to my employer, Alliance Bernstein, for being incredibly supportive of this initiative. Please remember to rank us on your favorite podcast network and to share these stories with your friends and family. Until next time, thank you for listening.